Welcome back to The View with Vertex. We are here in a brand new studio, brand new surroundings, but same fantastic content. Today's guest is none other than Wayne Connolly. Wayne is the Managing Director of Connolly Scaffolding. He is also the newly inaugurated President of the NASC.
Scaffolding is a professional trade. We should put ourselves on a pedestal.
I think the whole world looks to the UK for, as the kind of North Star when it comes to scaffolding.
We all know that scaffolding isn't a career of choice, and that's something that's an image we've got to change. We knew we were poor and that, but we thought it was normal. We had no money in the house. We had nothing. The business wouldn't be it wouldn't be there now if we would have continued. There's no doubt about it. And it was a huge risk that we took. It is the biggest scaffolding single event of the world.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about everything from his role at the NASC, his humble beginnings in Didsbury in South Manchester, through to starting his first business and eventually becoming the MD of Connolly Scaffolding. I really do hope that you enjoy today's episode. If you do, all that I ask is you like and subscribe and get notified every time we drop some new content. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Wayne, welcome to The View with Vertex.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a while, hasn't it? We've been trying to get this coordinated for quite some time, though.
Yeah, probably about 8 months or so.
I guess you've been a pretty busy man. Recently inaugurated as President of the NASC.
Yeah, back in November the 29th.
And obviously still very busy as Managing Director of Connolly Scaffolding.
We're fairly busy doing what we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've seen all sorts of stuff all over social media. It seems like both things are sort of skyrocketing in tandem, really.
I mean, the NASC takes a fair bit of my time being the president, as it does with all the presidents anyway. And obviously Connolly Scaffolding is. We're doing now a varied amount of work. We've gone into a few new markets, and we're doing really well with them.
I saw a little infographic pop up on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, and it just showed some of the locations you guys are working. I think for a lot of people, they see Connolly Scaffolding as predominantly a northern scaffolding contracts. Obviously, we're based in Manchester, same as us. But and in my experience, I've seen Connolly Scaffolding sort of grow year on year, but then to see that map of the other locations around the UK, is that a recent thing that you've been?
No, it's not actually. No. So we've done Leicester, London. We did a decent sized project on embankment in London. We've got another 2 projects we're due to start in London. We're just waiting for final sign off from the PC. We do a lot in Leeds, Liverpool, Southport, a little bit in the Lake District, and we do quite a bit in the southwest actually. So we're Bristol, so Clifton Suspension Bridge, which is a fantastic project to be involved in. It really is. And then we're just doing a bridge near St Austell, a place called Pontsmill. So that'll be finished next week.
Right. So I mean, that type of work, the infrastructure work, is this kind of one of the new markets you're kind of pushing into, or is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so we got into an industrial site in Deeside, so shot and paper mill, which is just a massive project. So we're doing a lot of work on there as well. So that's a new market for us in the industrial side. The bridge side of it, probably about 2 years now we've been into bridges, and we slowly got into it and made sure that we had the right teams for working away. And we just got used to that type of work, and that's the big part of our expansion now.
So for those that don't know, because I mean you hear this sort of term in business quite a lot, it takes 10 years to make an overnight success. Connolly Scaffolding, what's the story with Connolly's? When did you start?
So Connolly started in 2002, so it was May in 2002. I'd already been in business since 1993, so I was 22 years old, and I went into the industry I was in, which is retailing in cars. So I was a car mechanic when I left school. So when I left school, I went into a YTS scheme for 2 years, became a car mechanic. And then in 22, I opened my own first garage. And then up to about 97, 98, 99, I opened 4 other garages. So I had 5.
Was this like servicing cars?
Yeah, we serviced cars and repaired them. So we had some really big contracts. So all the RAC vans, if people remember the RAC vans, they used to be white and they used to have a crown on the side of them before they went orange. And we used to service and repair them on the north of England. So they used to be fixed every 6 months and MOT'd every 6 months.
So there was a real commercial kind of aspect to it.
Yeah, we did a lot of fleet vehicles and that. So I studied mechanical engineering at college and at night school, which is obviously part of the garages and what we do. So before we opened Connolly Scaffolding, I was going for probably about 9 years or so.
And do you think that before you started the car garages and the mechanics sort of side of things, do you feel like you were like a natural entrepreneur? Is it something that came naturally to you, or something that you'd had to study? Or
No, not at all. All I wanted to do, in 1992, 93, we were in a real bad recession then. So it was coming to the end of Thatcher years, we were in a bad recession. And interest rates went to 15%. Now, that's way before your time, I think.
Probably, yeah. But
on a Friday, they went to 15% interest rates. So if you give you the idea, I was 21 at the time. And I'd just bought my first house in Disbury, and the house cost me $61,000, and I had a £59,000 mortgage, interest only, because we used to have endowments in them days, and that was £750 a month in them days, just an interest only mortgage on $59,000.
Which is fine if the interest rate's low, but then as soon as it sort of skyrockets, you kind of
it was 15%. And we had a
like great news for savers, but like for
it was crippling at the time. So a year later, in '93, that's when I set up on my own. And no, I had no entrepreneurial spirit at all. All I wanted to do was pay my bills. And what happened was, because we were in a recession, I worked for one company when I left school. It was only a small company, and I was handsomely paid. Hence the reason why I could buy a house at 21. And they just decided that they didn't want to pay the bonuses they were paying, and that sort of left me in a bit of a stuck because it was a recession. So I decided the only way of doing it is go and do it myself.
Do you know, I'm listening to that, I'm sort of hearing parallels between like sort of your story and mine. Like, so I didn't start my first business until 2020, so I'd been in scaffolding for a long time before I started up on my own. But the mortgage and, I got my first property as well at 21, and that was 2007. Well, that was September, and within sort of 6-7 months, we had the global financial crisis, and similar sort of, although it wasn't the interest rates and stuff like that, but you just couldn't find work anywhere.
Yeah.
It forces your hand on it. You have this adversity, and sometimes, it doesn't feel like it at the time, does it? But like it sort of drives you on.
Yeah, it does. All I wanted to do was pay my bills. So that was my whole goal, was just literally to pay my bills. So I went to the bank and thought, well, hold on, I can fix cars, I can do this myself. I'd found an empty unit in the middle of Stockport that I thought, oh, okay, I can work from there. I can do 12, 13, 14 hours a day. I can do 7 days a week because I am the product. And as long as I can get enough money to pay my bills. So I needed about £7,000 to buy the equipment, the ramps and all the rest of the stuff. Went to the bank, they couldn't borrow it me. I come from quite a poor family, which, quite a large family. It's an Irish family of 7 brothers and sisters.
A lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah, well, it was. I was the youngest of 7, and I went to borrow money from the bank, couldn't do it. Family and friends, 7,000 in them days, quite a lot of money. And it was my girlfriend's grandma at the time who lived down in Oxford, just south of Oxford near Abingdon, and she lent me the £7,000 to set up my business, and from there, that's where everything grew from.
Yeah, it's the risk. You must have had maybe not necessarily the proclivity towards entrepreneurship at the time, but there seems like an appetite for risk that has to be a part of most entrepreneurs' journey as well, doesn't it?
It is. The biggest risk I had is not being able to pay my bills, but with what I was left with, that was also a risk.
I guess when you're at that, so it's back against the wall, isn't it? Like,
it was.
Make or break.
It was, and so many people are like that. So, people say, oh, it's easy to get into business in them days and stuff like that. And well, I don't know, because I don't know what it's like nowadays, because once you start with something, then you've got something. So in 22 years old as I was then, starting a business, the only thing I believed in is the fact that I could work 24 hours a day if I had to make a success of it. And I think that if you believe in that and you're willing to put the hours in and that, then
you almost become unstoppable to a degree, don't you? If you're just willing to push through and get through the difficult moments.
Yeah, well, the way I saw it is all the competitors. I mean, when I opened the garage, there was 11 garages in a half a mile on the same road. By the time I'd sold the garages, there was 2. So that sort of give you an idea. After 24 years on that one road in Stockport, there was 11 independent garages, and by the time 24 years down the line, there was 2.
And were both of those garages more kind of commercial and taking big contracts on, like you said, with the RAC and?
Yeah, I think they were just more professional. Mm-hmm. You know, they were more professional, and they're both there now. I mean, the garage in Stockport is still my name.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's still under the name.
Yeah, you'll have to drop a link. I'll have to have a drive past on the way back.
Well, it's just my name. You just Google the name and it comes up with it. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I came from quite a poor family. You know, we grew up in...
and whereabouts was this?
Disbury, South Manchester.
Disbury, yeah.
So it was a 2 up, 2 down in Disbury, and there were 7 of us in the house. There was 8, but unfortunately one of the brothers died. He got killed before I was born. So I'm the youngest of 7. There's 10 years between me and the eldest, so you can tell that my dad had a busy time over them 10 years.
I'll let someone else make the no TV job.
And there's 2 years between me and my sister, so really work that one out. And there was a 2 up, 2 down. Like most families in them days, the front room downstairs was the best room and you weren't allowed in there. So there was quite a few of us squeezed in bedrooms. The bathroom, which was upstairs, wasn't really a bathroom. Well, it wasn't a bathroom. It was my bedroom and my brother's bedroom, and we used to top and tail. We had no hot water. We had no running water in the bathroom. We had an outside toilet. Our kitchen was a lean-to, and we had no heating in the house, no central heating in the house at all. We had no hot water, as I said before. If you wanted to get washed and changed, you used to have to tell people, because for them to go through to the lean-to kitchen to go to the toilet, you had a plastic bowl in the sink, like your grandma probably had, and you boiled pans of water. We didn't even have an electric kettle, and you filled the bowl up, and that's how you got washed. And
quite literally first up, best dressed, innit?
We had nothing. We as kids we had nothing. Mm-hmm. We never had cereal or breakfast before we went to school, because the money wasn't there. We didn't have toilet paper in the outside toilet. You used to have to make do with newspaper, and there'd be a few people listening that will remember them days. But you know, coming from an Irish family, that's just how they lived. We knew we were poor and that, but we thought it was normal. Yeah. And that was the biggest driver for me, is I got to look at my brothers and sisters above me and stuff, and the way my parents were. And the best thing that my parents gave me, I guess, is that they rented a house in Disbury, which was a fairly affluent area, still is now, and the schools were really good. So we had a good schooling.
And do you think that played a big part? Did you do sort of quite well at school?
Yeah, I did fairly well at school, and I could have gone on and do my A-levels at the time, but we had no money in the house. When we had no money, when we had nothing, and I mean, you know, you think this is in 1980s. I was boiling water to have a wash at the sink, with no shower, no bath, no hot water upstairs. The bathroom's my bedroom, and I'm sharing a bed with my brother, topping and tailing, and a single bed at that. No duvet. In winter, we used to put socks on our hands and our coats over our beds.
Yeah, so it's really, really sort of humble beginnings, and then, like, as you say, you kind of did well at school. I mean, clearly, you know, I think this speaks to a lot of kind of people who end up in business. You know, I mean, some of the conversation at Scaffex, which, you know, we'll get onto it in a little while. You know, a lot of people who started out in business and sort of made the comment that they weren't very bright at school, they didn't do very well at school, and that you know, they kind of thought they were stupid, and that, you know, starting a business and, you know, working for themselves, they almost proved to themselves that they weren't. They just weren't interested necessarily in what the school was trying to teach them. And I think what you're saying is more that you could have quite easily and clearly had the you know, the kind of brains to do it, to advance in school, but it was more of a necessity that earning money had to kind of come first.
Yeah, there's no doubt. We used to have the 11 plus at in them days. So,
And was that like a test to see if you could get into
to grammar.
Yeah, to a grammar school.
And I could have got into the grammar. I got a good 11 plus, and that just meant when I went to secondary school, and we couldn't afford even on scholarship. My parents couldn't even. Well, they just wouldn't. Whether they could, they just wouldn't do it. I mean, my dad was in construction, so that's the background. So people say, how do you go from garages to construction? Well, my dad was in construction, so he worked for the likes of Henry Boot, Langer Rorke's,
They're Leeds-based
Lovells.
company, the Henry Boots. Are they that over that way, Leeds? I'm sure they're still going.
Well, no, Henry Boots are. So my dad used to be a ganger foreman in them days. So a ganger foreman was the hard man on site that ran the men. So he was a ganger foreman. So we got everybody jobs. So no surprise, he got my brothers and the sister's boyfriend's jobs within the industry. And I was literally the one that decided when I left school, that's not what I want.
The black sheep.
I just don't want to do construction. I just didn't want to do it. I was interested in cars. I love fixing things. I could mechanically, I knew how things work. And you know, I'd take things apart, washing machines and stuff like that, and be able to understand them. So that was my love, really, and my passion is being able to understand the mechanical side of things, the engineering side. And I would have loved to have got on and done an engineering degree, but it wasn't meant to be. We had no money, and the only thing I thought, well, you best get out there and earn some. So from the age of 12, 13, I used to work in a butcher's. Every night except Wednesday, straight after school, and all day Saturday, and that used to give me money, early morning paper rounds, and I always had money. And then when I went into fixing cars, then I'd do foreigners at weekend and stuff. You always got somebody who needs the car fixing, and along them lines of what you did. So, and opening my own business and doing that was the natural progression. But did I want 5 garages? Did I want to buy the properties where the garages were? No, I didn't. I never thought of that in a million years. I just wanted to pay my bills. I wanted to have a frugal life. When I first bought my first house, which I said before, I bought it in Disbury, I had a shower, I had a bathroom upstairs and a toilet.
So
and I had central heating. Yeah, and I just wanted to pay my bills and do that.
I think my missus gets annoyed at me for stuff like that. It's like, you know, I'm from a similar background. I grew up in Boston. Same sort of story. Didn't really have much. Single parent family, you know.
Yeah.
The typical kind of person you would see in scaffolding. And like, so some of what we have now, I'm like, we've made it. Do you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of what we've got is like luxury. To be driving a nice car and to you know, to have our own property and this and that. And I think sometimes the missus is a bit like, just do a bit more. Just could you make sure that's fixed? And I'm like, we're doing well here. Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a leveler. I don't think there's a. Well, there isn't. There's not a day or a week that goes past where I'm not, you know, thankful for where I've ended up. You know. And it has been a long journey, but it's 30, it's coming up to 33 years now of me working for myself across, as we know, 2 different industries.
How did the transition come about from, because I guess there are similarities, but there's big differences as well between scaffolding and you know, car mechanics.
Yeah, I mean, I never ever once woke up one day and said I want a scaffolding company. That's for sure. And what happened is my eldest brother, he was a scaffolder, and he wanted to open his own business. So he came to me and asked me about a business plan, and he didn't have any money to put into the business. He just left the company he'd been working with for a number of years. So I helped him with a business plan. He went to the bank and the bank refused him. So this is back in 2002. So I offered him, I'd already been with my company for 9 years. I owned property as well in Stockport, commercial property. And I offered him to bankroll the scaffolding that could run from the premises I owned, at the back of the premises I owned in the middle of Stockport. Excuse me. And basically, we'd be 50-50. I'd supply the money. He had the know-how. He had the contacts. He said he had he knew some scaffolders that would come and work for us, and it came from that. So,
and was this your first business partnership? Or had you partnered with people before?
Yeah, I'd partnered in my early days on the land that we had in Stockport, and so we had a piece of land that the garage trade from when I first opened it, and that didn't last very long. That lasted a year just on commercial issues, a couple of years maybe on commercial issues, and that went by the wayside. But the garages obviously were mine, but my brother, we decided to do it 50-50. I had the land, I had the premises, I had the finance to do it. He had the contacts, he had that side of things, and he was going to run it, and I was going to do the back room, the business side of things.
I mean, it does seem like a familiar story, like you do see a lot of these sort of partnerships come about where, I can think of a scaffold company that one of our retained clients, a similar story. In fact, it's a very similar story in as much as the younger brother was into, he was a car mechanic, he had and the elder brother was in scaffolding, a very similar sort of idea. But I think, the reason I asked about partnerships and stuff like that is because I think a lot of partnerships when they start are kind of 50-50 ventures, aren't they? I mean, perhaps we'll see later on as you tell us more about Connolly Scaffolding and, that the beginnings through to where it is now, how it all kind of panned out. But I know from what I've seen, everybody when they start, it's like it's 50-50 because I bring this, you bring that. I bring this, you bring that. And like, I think if you were to perhaps fast forward 10 years into the business, you'd probably see that the equity is maybe not 50-50, but no one ever starts out like that. It's just interesting
it didn't.
to get
Well, it started out 50-50 and that, and we started with 2 scaffolders. And like I said, I had the business side of things, the computerized and everything that we did, and the finance to do it. And after about 3 years, we had difference of opinions. And the difference of opinions is I like doing things one way and the way I want to do them. And my brother didn't have the same view. And we parted company. So it was about 4 years in. We were coming up to another recession.
Is it the 2008 one now, I guess?
Yeah, it was. So it was 2007. We'd seen that the markets had started to harden. I didn't have the same views as my brother insofar as the way that business is being done and the way that we were looking at things. And it wouldn't be fair of me to tell the whole story because there are 2 sides to a story. But nonetheless, the business wouldn't be it wouldn't be there now if we would have continued. There's no doubt about it. And I'd invested a serious amount of money by this time. We'd been going for about 4 years. And if anybody knows how much investment that scaffolding is in the early days, then they know how much money you sink into it without getting anything back. I mean, we did make profit from year one, but that profit, there's a difference between profit and cash.
Yeah.
But you constantly capex and capex and capex.
Yeah, and you've got in the back of your mind that you're building this asset and
correct. And stuff, and that asset isn't worth a carrot if you don't realise it. And don't allow somebody else to deal you sweeties. So you got to stay in business and stuff. So we parted company, and I bought my brother out in 2007, and then 6 months later the world fell apart, which was in hindsight, which always seems to be the right answer. Probably wasn't the best move for me personally, but nonetheless I did, and we are where we are with it, and. I sunk a considerable amount of more money into it, bearing in mind I had a very successful company with the garages. The garages were, by this time, 13, 14 years in.
And they were still going?
Yeah. So between the 2 companies, there was a 16-year overlap. So by the time that we opened the scaffolding, I'd won major awards down in London at the Grosvenor House, industry awards for the motor trader industry, through doing things differently, business development of the year, most improved business, independent garage of the year. So we won about 5 or 6 awards down there. In fact, in 1997, Jill Dando gave me an award at the Grosvenor House in London.
All right.
The year before, obviously,
we all know what happened,
yeah. So that was a year before.
Just remind me not to. Sorry to make the joke, but remind me not to award you with anything at Scafex when we in Manchester. If you want to present the award, pick someone else.
Well, we
I can pick a few people for you if you like.
Well, the award that Connolly Scaffolding got, I think it was in Cardiff. I think it was Sean Locke.
Yeah.
So he gave us one for Manchester Airport Terminal 2 when we did that. So. Yeah,
R.I.P. Sean Locke and Jill Dando. That's definitely me off the award list.
So it's so I was left with the scaffolding company. I'd had 4 years understanding clients. I understood clients anyway. That was the side that I did understand. I understand what clients want. I understand what good service was. I came from the service industry anyway, from the garage background. I had three very, very good employees that had been there since the business started. 2 are now directors, and one of them's a senior manager, senior estimator. So they were with me pretty much since we started the business, and they were scaffolders. And being able to lean on them and then lean on me, then we took Connolly Scaffolding through the recession in 2008, which was pretty brutal for most people. And then we were able to build the business up from there.
Yeah, I suppose part of it's just staying on the horse, isn't it? It's like sometimes you things grow, and sometimes things you kind of pull back. Yeah. I mean, the business has to be the right size for the the market it's in and all the rest of it. I think some people kind of just expect infinite growth, and business you do have to pivot, you do have to change the markets that you're in dependent on which way the winds blow. But sometimes it's just about staying in.
One of the things that Connolly Scaffolding's been good at is marketing. So we've always been really good at marketing, and we've always been really invested in the business. So we've always invested in the business. I think in 2008 we went out and bought 8 brand new trucks, Mercedes trucks, and my other 2, they weren't directors at the time, but my other 2, if they're like construction managers, they thought that I'd lost the plot. Because they're like, what the hell are you doing? Why would you do this? The world's just about falling apart. Why would you buy 8 Mercedes trucks? And I said, well, what we want to show is that if we invest now, people will look at us and say, this company's investing, this company's a safe company.
Yeah, I mean, it also should be said that if there's a huge opportunity, right? At times of recession and things like that. If you're reasonably liquid at a point where everyone else is, I think what's that old Warren Buffett quote? Be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy.
Yeah, well, it's true. And what we did is we managed to steal a march on the fact that we took that opportunity, as you said, during the recession. It's very similar to what Lee Roswell said, is that, in 2000...
I missed that one as well at Scaffolding.
Did you? Yeah. Oh, shame on you. Terrible. But yeah, Lee said the same. They invested when everybody pulled back. And it is about stealing that market share. We started Connolly Scaffolding and we had no market share, and then within 4, 5, 6 years, we had a sizable chunk of the market share, which is then difficult to take away. And then you build on that market share, the piece of the pie, and you say that's what we want. You want to get that reach to people, and that's the business side of things.
And is this sort of played into, because we do need to go into the sort of NASC stuff and becoming president? Is that what you think the membership saw? Because obviously, I mean, starting from a position of like, well, how does the presidency come about? How is the how is that position awarded to somebody? Because I think a lot of people probably don't know.
No, they probably don't. I mean, if you fast forward, I mean, Connolly Scaffolding, this is our 23rd year, so it's not a new company by any stretch, and we've pretty much done most projects right the way through, from doing social housing, street work, to new build housing, which we don't do either of them anymore, right the way through to some of the most iconic bridges in the UK. So, I got asked to be regional chair for the NASC. So the regional chair for the NASC was North East, North West and North Wales, as you're probably aware.
And who asks? Is it just the current president who asks?
Yeah, so it's the current board that say, we think you'd be good at this, could you put your name forward? And unfortunately, with volunteering for positions like the NASC, not a lot of people put the name forward, believe it or not. There's a lot of people that talk about it, but when you've got to volunteer and give up your free time. So I was been an NASC member for must be 15, 16 years. So we put it forward, and I'm going back now probably 8 years maybe. So regional chair for the NASC, and then you go to the council in London. And the council's made up of about 24 people around.
And is that kind of a fluid sort of situation? Does that change the council over time? Are they voted in and out? Or?
Yeah, so the council is made up of each of the regions, each of the committee chairs. Small, medium and large companies have representations on there. We have some outside consultants as well that will be part of it. Obviously, NASC staff and stuff. So that's what the council are. And so I chaired the Northwest or the Northern region for probably about 3 years, I think it was. And then there came an opportunity for, at the time, they called it the Audit Committee. So the Audit Committee basically set the audit criteria just for contracting members. So it had nothing to do with all the other memberships like design membership and info members that just came about, hire and sales, SAP members and stuff.
So they've merged now. Well, I've just been merged into that.
Yeah, they have
supplier
now.
And it was supplier and SAP. I was SAP.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and there was hire and sales. So I moved over from the Northern Regional Chair to Audit Committee, and some could say that's the poison chalice, really. So I moved over to the Audit Committee, and then I felt that the Audit Committee actually should be membership and compliance. So it should cover all the membership, not just basically the membership just for contracting members. So that changed. And then most recently, in the last 12 months, the membership and compliance being one committee is pretty much marking your own homework. So we've removed the compliance side of it, which is the auditing side, and the standards. So now you've got standards, which are setting the standards for each of the actual membership. And then the auditing side is marking, if you like, basically auditing and making sure that people are applying the standards. So they used to be one committee, they're now two committees, and that's where we're going to see a huge benefit. And Lee Roswell's the chair of the auditing, so I'm chair of this standards committee. So the standards committee, we look at the standards to be a NASC member, whichever category you are, hire and sales or SAP, which is now both supply membership. And it made sense to actually bring them together rather than being separate, because if you're a supplier to the NASC, you're a supplier, no matter what supplier that you are. And it made life a lot easier with that. And then you've got the information members, the overseas membership, design membership, and so on and so forth. So my committee look at the standards there and what they should be, and then the auditing side make sure that the audit's being carried out correctly, and people are meeting that standard.
And a lot of that has changed, and there seems to be, obviously the winds have changed. You've been blowing quite strongly within the NASC. So, I mean, on the sort of cusp of David Brown towards the end of his presidency and towards the start of your becoming the president, there was this, bringing in of Clive. What drove that decision, and was it a sort of committee led or?
Yeah, well, you have the board and then you have the committee, and yeah, it was. I mean, the NASC has done amazing. This is its 80th year, and the NASC's done amazing. It's got some amazing members, and a lot of people who contribute a hell of a lot of their free time to actually improve the industry, and let's not forget that. But there's an executive that run the NASC, because the members can't be running it because they've got their own businesses to run, or they work within the business to run. So they're the executive, and that executive then have the duty of care to run it on behalf of the members and improve it. And there was quite a lot of membership at the time that felt that maybe the membership wasn't doing what it should be doing. We weren't really going at a pace we should have been going. We've been missing opportunities that really the NASC could have done and should have done. And I think it was, the executive at the time actually took it so far and did so well, but it's actually taken it to the next level. And sometimes you just run out of steam, and they'd been there for 20 years or so. And I think I think it was just the right time for new blood to come in and actually see with a fresh pair of eyes, and that's where it led to, really.
And so Clive's role in having a CEO, that led to, for the first time ever, NASC having a business plan, which I think some people will think, oh my God, why didn't they have a business plan before this? That's my take on it. But then there are other people, from perhaps a more of a spectator kind of position, saying, well, why do we need one?
Well, why does any business need one? And every business needs a business plan, whether or not it's written on the back of a fag packet or whether or not it's nicely polished and on a PowerPoint presentation. That you need a business plan because you need something to follow. The business plan has to be fluid, it has to be adaptable, and it has to be able to pivot, as you said before. So, but you need a plan. So we go back to the executive who run the NASC. That's their day job. They should be running the NASC. And then you look at the membership and then the council. So, is it right that the council and the president and the past president and the vice president are then running the NASC? Because if you think a president comes in for 2 years, so we had David Brown, as you mentioned before, and before David Linway, and now me for 2 years. Well, we have opposing views. We have different. We agree on a hell of a lot, but we're not the same people. A president coming in shouldn't be able to steer the NASC in one direction or another, because then every 2 years the NASC is changing.
Which, if you look at to draw a comparison between that and actual politics, it's probably one of the major criticisms. It's like when we give people short terms in office, all these policies come in, some of them work, some of them don't, and then 2 years later or whatever, 4 years later, in real terms, someone else comes in, everything changes. And like to have that continuity from above, not necessarily above, but from someone overseeing the organisation.
Yeah, well, let's be brutally honest. The executive should be running the business. That's what they're paid to do. They should be running the business, but they should be they should be producing a business plan that's very clear, very precise, that the membership can understand, and also the council and the president and the non-exec directors can understand. And we measure the executive on the business plan. So the business plan is, what are we going to deliver, where are we going to be, and what budget have we got? And and the non-exec directors, which I am a non-exec director, David Brown's still a non-exec director, Sarah Cleave is a non-exec director because she's the vice president now. Our job is to make sure the executive deliver on the business plan. It's simple. If you have no business plan, then what's the executive going to deliver?
And what with?
And what with, and whose money? So it seems crazy not to have one. And every business has some sort of a plan of what they want to do or where they want to be and how they're going to get there. So the NASC having a business plan and following that business plan is then led by the executives, and you move from this secretariat of the members running the business on an ad hoc basis, depending who's coming and going, and the executive then running it for the betterment of all the members. And yes, it takes away from the president. Don't get me wrong, and I'm all for that. I'm all for signing that up, because the executives have to be held account, and that's exactly what Clive's brought in. He's more than happy to be held accountable. You see him out and about, visiting members. That's never happened before. Actually visiting them at their premises, having these workshops and stuff, listening to them, and then that then feeds into the business plan of where we should be. And the business plan, that's given at regional meetings. The business plan was given at the AGM. The budgets were given at the AGM. This is an open, transparent process that we've gone through. And no matter who then comes in as the next president after me or after Sarah, and so on and so forth, the business plan is there and it's a solid thing.
And you get to follow that path. I just wanted to sort of touch on a few criticisms that I've seen out and about just recently. And they kind of all tie in together. But I mean, one, while we're on this, kind of subject of business plan and money making, I mean, you do hear a lot of people saying, oh, it's just a big money making scheme. And, it's all about, profit, and it's being, spent inappropriately. You hear a lot of different kind of criticisms. So starting with one that I hear quite a lot is that there's too many, it's non-scaffolders running the NASC. What would your sort of take be on that?
Well, anybody that went to Scaffex, I was the opening keynote speaker, and I told people on the AGM the day before, actually, when I got sworn in as the president, is that I put a presentation up on the AGM and with my skills. And somebody asked me, it was at a rugby game, actually, an England and France rugby game, and somebody asked me, what qualifies you to be the president? And I said, actually, I couldn't answer it, because without being egotistical, I'm not really the right person to answer that, because I'm not the one that voted me in. However, I put up on the board what my skills were over the 32 years of running my own business, starting with a £7,000 loan, coming from humble beginnings, as you said before. I've been non-exec directors for companies like Bridgestone Firestone, the tyre company. When I was 27 years old, I chaired their meetings in Leamington Spa as a dealer chairman for tyre companies. Non-exec director for a multi-academy trust for 5 years, winning major awards, running my own business over 32 years, nearly 33 years, through many recessions, including the COVID, including, the 2008 bank crash, including the 93 recession, employing, if you added the two companies together, over 150 employees, over 2 different industries. And you go, the only thing that was missing, guess what it is? I'm not a scaffolder. So... okay.
I think it's a funny old world, and
the thing, one of the things we've got to understand, when people say there's too many people non-scaffolders, there was something on LinkedIn the other week, and along them lines, and sometimes I can't help myself because I feel obliged. To defend the membership.
Well, if our president of the organisation, if our leaders can't speak and answer critics, we spoke off air about leaders that we've both been around in the past who don't respond to questioning and criticism and all the rest of it, and that that's got to be worse. So the fact that you're willing to engage I think is got to be a positive thing.
Well, I am, and it's not an issue, but you've got to remember that the NASC is a trade body, and a trade body isn't putting scaffolding up. So the disservice that it's giving is that, I guess that people are talking about Clive doesn't come from a scaffolding background any more than I do. I've just said before, 33 years in business across 2 different industries. Well, you look at Clive's CV on running and being in trade bodies for pretty much all his business life and what he can do. But then you look at it and go, well, Connolly Scaffolding is fairly successful. And I told you about the 3 individuals that actually I lean on that do know scaffolding. But then you look at what makes up the NASC, what makes the NASC great. Well, what makes it great is the committees and the members and the time dedicated to it. So you have people like we said before, like Lee, like Alan Harris, like James
Collo. Well, Mark Collinson is newly announced on the technical. Well, he's a technical.
Head of technical.
Head
of technical. So, Mark. But Mark's been on the HSE, not the HSE, the Health and Safety Committee for years. So he's been feeding into that committee for many years. So now he's literally he's poacher turned gamekeeper. So he was on one side of the fence for the national company, the huge corporation that he was working for, obviously trying to affect change. Now he's going into a position with NASC where he can actually make the change. So, but that's just a classic example, again, of the injustice when people say that we need more scaffolders running NASC or we need more scaffolders in scissors. We've got a massive and a plethora of actual talent that works within scissors and within NASC. They just don't get paid. They're on the committees. These people give their time. They travel all over the country to have their say.
It's funny because, you really are talking about the people within the NASC itself. And with scissors as well, for years, and probably worse with scissors, was like they were the tip of the iceberg. Like the training providers, the trainers who work for the training providers, the people who attend the courses, all the rest of it, from that bottom up, they're all scaffolders. Do you know what I mean? It's just and even at the tip of the iceberg, there are still scaffolders there, Collo, for an example. There are still scaffolders up there, but, I kind of preaching to the choir. I genuinely believe that we need a good balance of, I think you've said, the right square pegs going in square holes, and you hear the, right people in the right seats. I do believe that we need people with experience in the role that they're occupying. And if you've got experience in the education sector, then yes, we need people.
We do
like that.
There's no doubt. We've got to have a broad brush. One of the things that
but we just have to make sure that it's being driven by the industry.
Well, the industry's driving it, and the business plan will deliver it. And that's why we go back to the business plan. Is that when we look at the people within NASC and the amount of skills that's there and the amount of just the wealth of knowledge that's within NASC. We're never going to get things right all the time. We're just not. But we're trying to get things right and we're trying to make change. And I think that's the biggest single thing, is that what people are seeing, people are noticing more now, is because we're changing more now, whereas before maybe they didn't notice it. And
it's just I was saying this off air, wasn't it, when we kind of first started out before we started recording. It's like you've probably come into the role at the best time in terms of what's actually been delivered and changed, and the worst time possible, because it's like you under the microscope probably more than any other serving president. And I mean, like, the parallel between yourself and Donald Trump, I genuinely believe that that's like almost played into the fact that, you got this brash American businessman who's coming to, be the president. He's changing this, he's shutting that border, he's putting tariffs on this country and stuff. And I think people are expecting the same thing from like the president of the NASC. It's like although there are similarities, there are massive differences.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being funny, but I'm not quite sure I'm not quite sure people want that. Politics are politics, and yes, there's politics within NASC. There's no doubt about it, and we've got to affect change, and we are giving change. I think again, it's an injustice to actually say that change isn't happening. It started with previous presidents, and we've just got to make sure that change is measured, and it's consulted on, and it's again, I keep going back to the business plan. If it's in the business plan, it should be delivered, and it should be delivered in the time frame that the business plan is asking, and the NASC is open, honest, and transparent when it comes to the business plan.
How was Scaffex played into the business plan?
Well, listen, we all know that scaffolding isn't a career of choice, and that's something that's an image we've got to change.
So I telling my son that. He's only 5, and he's
brilliant.
He was telling his little girlfriend yesterday, whose dad, by the way, is a scaffolder.
Yeah.
She came round to our house on Valentine's Day for a little dinner, and he was telling her I'm going to be a scaffolder.
Well, that's good.
Maybe he's chosen.
That's what we want, but that's probably because you and his future's bride, dad's a scaffolder. But that's what's happened in scaffolding, is that unless you knew somebody, my uncle, my dad, my brother, and they got you a job. But it was never really a scaffolding of choice, the careers and stuff. And we do have this massive gap between 16 to 18-year-olds that we there is no silver bullet, by the way. I don't have an answer, neither does anybody else, of getting the 16 to 18-year-olds. And what we've got to do is improve the image of scaffolding. Not that it needs improving, but we need to elevate the image. Improving the image is probably the wrong word, but definitely elevate the image of scaffolding and actually prove and showcase to people how professional it is. We've got thousands of people who the people who work for me, they're just brilliant. They're really, really good, really nice people, and they just want to earn enough money so they can pay the bills, exactly how I started off in business, as I said at the beginning of the filming. And that's what they want to do. And it's not fair that other trades, and we're not elevated as much as them. And where Scaffolders came about is when we were in Belfast with Clive. We're walking. We'd picked Belfast before Clive joined the company, and we picked Belfast because, as incoming president, my father came from Dungannon, just outside of Belfast. So I come from the Irish family from Northern Ireland, and we hadn't had one in Belfast in Northern Ireland. We didn't have any members until Clive came in Northern Ireland, which is a shame.
I know Robbie's a...
Yeah, we've got about 4 now. I think 3 or 4, members in Northern Ireland. So we decided to go to the ICC in Belfast, and we'd booked it. And then Clive, when he first joined, me and Clive were walking around Belfast and the ICC, and it's quite a big space, as you know. And we were looking at doing a conference and adding a conference on, and there's a huge auditorium there at the ICC, and it was far too big for what we wanted. And we said, well, could we do a conference at the same time? And then Clive said, well, why don't we do the expo? And I'm like, as well as the conference? Yeah. As well as the ball and the awards? And he went, yeah. So we spoke to the ICC on that day and said, you know, what about the
scaffolding
whole
Woodstock.
space? Yeah, well, let's take the whole space. And you know, we didn't
If we
have
book
that
it,
long.
they'll come.
Yeah, Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner, build it, they'll come. And I've said that more than once, that's for sure. So it was sort of born through walking around, and we knew that we needed something to actually showcase. Now, we have Bauma, and we have scaffolding in Bauma, we have World of Concrete, we have scaffolding there, but we have nothing as a standalone. And for the UK then to have this standalone event, as ScafX is that we can then show the rest of the industries and the rest of the world, really, that actually scaffolding is a professional trade. There's lots of fantastic people who work in it, and billion-dollar industry with the suppliers and the companies that work there. And we should be on a pedestal. We should put ourselves on a pedestal. And it was a huge risk that we took by doing it. If you think, I had to be convinced, and that walk around by Clive, that the night before I was going to become the new president, and then we were going to open the doors on something that's never happened before, which was ScafX, in Belfast, and people had to get flights there.
I don't think you're taking as much convincing on that. If I know you, I think I know you. I think you were chomping at the bit.
And the conference.
I think you probably saw that as a massive...
it was
someone who enjoys a challenge.
Me and Clive were downstairs in the foyer when it opened at 8 o'clock, and there was nobody stood at the door ready to come in. So we actually got everybody down from the stands. So because we had the Lord Lieutenant of Belfast opening it, and the Lord Lieutenant from Londonderry opening it, and we had nobody turned up because it was 8 o'clock and everybody's having breakfast, including my missus. She was having breakfast at the Hilton, and when
I think a lot of people might have had a few
maybe so.
Few Guinness the night before.
We did factor that in Belfast, to tell you the truth, because it's a great city, and to do it in Belfast where you had to get flights and stuff, and it was really to showcase how good the industry is, and we were very keen to make it open to all and free. So it wasn't just about NASC members; it was about anybody can come, anybody. And we had 3 or 4 companies in Dublin and Southern Ireland coming up. We had a company that flew in from Jersey. We had, as you said before, we had some people flying in from the States. We had the Japanese that came over, because I'd visited Japan earlier that year. We had the New Zealanders that came over because I'd visited
so many stories. I mean, Artem had a stand from Kiwazo. They had a stand, and the one of the guys who was supposed to be sort of attending the stand chose. Apparently, his father was getting married on that day, and then someone else was in Dubai, and there was no one really to fill the gap. So I called. A guy, he's called Simon Espinoza. You may have met or Simon Espinoza. And I said, yeah, are you going to be there? It'd be nice to catch up because we speak quite a lot. He's like, oh yeah, my dad's getting married. And he said, Jonas, he can't make it. He's in Dubai. I said, what about Artem? He said, Artem's over in the States. So I said, well, tell Artem. He said, I've still got my Kiwazo gear and all the rest of it. He said, I'll man the stand for him. So I said, as long as I can sell me Vertex underpants.
Yeah.
I said, I'll stand there and I'll tell people about Kiwazo as well. And he said, oh, so you're going? This is Artem. He said, so you're going? I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going. He's like, we should do that podcast. We've been very much the same as me and you. He's like, we should do that podcast. We've been speaking about it for so long now. We should do it. So I said, well, I'm going. So he redirected his whole itinerary. Flew out of Vegas, and then
it was fantastic, and it was really successful, and it was more successful than I thought it would be. I mean, when me and Lee were speaking, and I know you missed it because you said before, is that
I was selling underpants.
We literally had standing people stood at the back, and the room took 320.
I've heard so many things about Lee's and yourself as well, but how well received it was.
Yeah, and it was good, and we had the fireside chat where people could ask us anything. So you got the conference side of it with the different speakers, but then you've got the suppliers and the supply chain, and it was just so important. We had over 600, nearly 700 people that actually came to Belfast, which was amazing. So much so, every single stand actually took a bigger stand for Manchester. So. Obviously, this year's been announced. It's at Manchester Central, pretty much in 6 months now. So it's
for those who don't know, by the way, that's GMX.
Yeah, the old GMEX.
For the proper Manx amongst us, actually.
Yeah. So GMEX and the floor space is 10 times more. Yeah. It's a 2-day event. It's going to be a 5-day build-up for the suppliers and knockdown. And then we've got the Excellence Awards on the Friday night. So it's all under one roof again. We've got 2 days of conferences. We've got a scissors village. So every scissors centre in the UK has been given a stand. So there's a village that's going to be scissors training centres. There's a demo area, so suppliers will be able to have demos in what they're doing. The suppliers have got big stands, so quite a few have taken 3, 4, 5 times the size stands and what they got. We've got some new suppliers as well that's coming on board with it.
Are we planning on to do anything with that sort of? I know we've spoken. It's probably another episode for another day now, because I'm conscious we're running out of time. But has there anything been mentioned about potentially bringing schools and to try and engage the local community?
There is, and we've got some operational issues at the moment. Is that it's September, so the schools are just going back.
Yeah.
For the schools now,
I guess for the school leavers though, that's almost a perfect.
But to go to the schools and actually offer
for
it
apprentices.
But going to the school, listen, it's open to everybody. It's open to everybody in what we're doing. But to actually be able to get the schools, to then get the transportation from the schools to get it there, we don't have enough time to do that this year. However, it is in the cards to try and get that, to showcase exactly what we do. So the UK is going to have the SCAFX. It's in Manchester for 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So it's
if I'm not speaking at the first one, I'll definitely be speaking at the second.
Yeah. So, again, it's a 2-day event. Don't have the dates particularly for next year because we're concentrating on this year, albeit that it's going to be really big. And again, it's a free to entry event for anybody. So anybody can go. We're expecting, we're certainly giving people time off at our work. So we're giving the scaffolders time off to go over the 2 days. So they'll be able to go. It isn't just for owners and directors and health and safety. It's for your employees as well. So they can go and see what's new, nice shiny stuff, and be able to talk to people, talk to suppliers, see the new things that's out there, talk to training, and so on and so forth. It's a free event, which I said before, which is so important. This is not an insurmountable feat to be able to put on something like SCAFX. And with the floor space and that, it is the biggest scaffolding single event of the world that I know of.
That's it's a pretty amazing sort of achievement, and just a couple of years into Clive being involved in yourself. Just in closing, one thing I would definitely like to say is if we can get the schools and we can get, because I know there's going to be a massive emphasis on plugging this skills gap. Again, it's another episode for another day. But I think one thing that could really help to bring new people in the industry, as much as we can show them, the bridges, and we can show them the Rylands buildings and these fancy, amazing scaffolds. If we had more stories, I see this huge push now with young people towards wanting to be entrepreneurs, to work for themselves, to build businesses. If we had more stories like yours told, I think the industry would be in a better place.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you got to remember SCAFX, it won't even be 12 months old by the time September comes around, because the last one was in November. So it's less than 12 months old. And, it'd be fantastic to get the schools there. And we are working on it. And logistically, even just with insurance on getting under 18s in a building where there's scaffolding, believe it or not, the health and safety police are out in force.
Perhaps the school leavers. I mean, perhaps we go to the secondary schools towards the end of the term, and then there'll be so many people like I was.
Yeah.
I'm just to go off on a little tangent, but I remember leaving school, and I remember going to Loretto College in Moss Side, and sitting down and being told that if I wanted to go to college, because you can imagine, didn't do very well in my GCSEs, I wasn't really interested in that type of schooling. I think I wanted to do something, anything with an ology at the end of it. God knows why. I think it was like sociology or something like that. And I was told I had to do Spanish, I had to do this, that and the other, in order to get my GCSEs up to a level where I could do the courses I wanted to do. And I thought, that's not why I came to college. Surely I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
And I didn't even last a day. I went and left and found scaffolding.
Well, the whole, we talked about Scafex right at the beginning, and the whole reason of Scafex is to elevate the industry. And if we can elevate the industry, then therefore we can then feed in the school leavers. We can feed in the forces and leavers and so on and so forth. So it's about elevating the industry first. Try and get the people through the door. We're expecting the 3,000 people over the 2 days at.
I can believe it. If you can get if you can get that many people over to
Belfast,
which is a flight for most people or a ferry or whatever. Yeah. If you can do that, and it's the first one, so it's a concept at that point.
Yeah. So so Scafex is about showcasing our industry and actually elevating it, and just showcasing for what we do, because we do a lot of amazing things across the country and across the world, and we've got a huge international delegation coming as well this year again. So we're just waiting for confirmations, but we've got a lot coming again, and they're really interested in what we're doing.
I think the whole world looks to the UK for as the kind of North Star when it comes to scaffolding in terms of health and safety, in terms of compliance, design, pretty much everything. So you're right. It's a great product.
You're right. We get a lot of things right. We really do, and we get. Don't get me wrong. We get stuff wrong. Of course we do, but we get a lot right. We should start talking about what we get right, because other people from other countries are talking about what we get right, and they'd love what we've got. They'd absolutely love what we've got. We've got to fix what we're getting wrong, but that takes time. However, we've got to start somewhere, and there isn't a silver bullet. We've got to do it across multitude of things, and one of them is Scafex. Scafex, again, is a huge part to play to actually showcase what scaffolding is in the industry and driving people through the door.
Wayne, it's been absolutely fascinating. I could sit here and talk all day, but I can see Morgan in the background there nodding his head and telling us to wrap up. So massive thank you.
No problem.
I'm sure it'll be the first of many. We'll have to sit down and do this again. It's been long enough. Yeah. You wait for a bus, as they say.
Yeah.
And then 3 come along at once, so hopefully one again in the near future.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
I truly hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, all I ask is that you like, subscribe, and get notified every time we drop a new episode.